Welcome to IVF This, episode 184, IVF and Stim cycles. Welcome to IVF This. I'm your host, Emily Ginn. After 10 years of primary and secondary infertility due to both male and female factor infertility, I am now the mother to 3 beautiful miracles. I am married to my favorite person in the world. I'm a social worker, a life coach, and an IVF warrior. I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and emotions during your IVF journey, to break free from anxiety and regain control of your life, even in the midst of infertility. I'm going to teach you how to say IVF this to how we think about, talk about, and experience infertility. Let's go. Hello, my beautiful friends. I hope you're all doing so well today. I hope wherever this podcast episode finds you, on a walk, in the car, whatever and wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, I hope you're giving yourself just a moment of grace today, just a teeny tiny moment. So I know it's been a bit since you've heard from me. We haven't had a podcast episode, I should say, drop for the whole month of July. I've been recovering from a pretty bad knee injury. Earlier in July, I was playing soccer in the backyard with one of my kiddos. We were having fun and we were talking a little smack to each other, as one does. And I started to play a little fast and loose with my 41-year-old joints. And I went to make a cut on my run and I heard 2 pops and I was just down. I had to send my kid to go get my husband to help me stand up, and we had to go to the emergency room. And initially we were told that there's definitely something going on with my ACL, but also that I had what's called a tibial plateau fracture. So the very top of the tibia, which is a shin bone, that was fractured. And then we went through, a dozen or so x-rays, MRI. And at this point, the diagnosis is just at least a partially torn ACL. I know that's not a just, but it's much better than adding in the fracture as well. So it's not like super great news, but most of the last few weeks have been just me taking it easy, resting, elevating, and icing my leg. I was on some pretty good pain medication for a while, which is also not very conducive to writing or creativity or recording podcast episodes. But I start physical therapy this week. So I'm really excited to get back to it. If you've listened to me before, you know that I love to run and kickbox and lift weights and stuff like that. So there have been elements of Emily crawling up the wall, especially for not really having any intense exercise to do for the last month or so. But here we are. We're going to make it. And I'm ready. I'm ready to get back to it because honestly, the podcast is one of my favorite things. I love to write. It tends to be one of the first things that I have to kind of take stock in, which is interesting because it does take an enormous amount of time. But I'm really excited to be back. I'm really excited for this episode. And I'm really excited that I got to talk with you all. So I'm ready. I have a full script written out today. I want to make sure I stay on topic and make sure I cover all of the areas that I want to. We're not going to let ADHD hijack this episode at all. I'm going to try and stay immediately what's on my screen, what's on my script. So we're going to talk about part of the IVF process that doesn't always, at least for my podcasts, I haven't really given it the attention that this incredibly emotional part of the process requires, right? It deserves its own attention because the stimulation cycle of an IVF cycle is a really emotional, wrought with uncertainty period of time. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the shots, the bloating, the bruising, the hope, the fear, the spreadsheets, the whirl of what if it doesn't work or what if it doesn't work again. Now, for some of you, this is your first round, right? Your first of needles, your first early morning blood draws, your first moments realizing that your life has become kind of a logistical operation revolving around estrogen, your estrogen levels and follicle size. And for some of you, this is not your first rodeo. And I see you. I see the ones walking into a new cycle, not with naive excitement, but with a kind of quiet courage that comes from being broken before. The ones who are trying again again, after cycles that ended in heartbreak, in disappointment, in grief that isn't visible to anyone but you and maybe the person that you share your experiences with, whether that's your partner or your friends or your family. There is a difference between the pain and uncertainty of not knowing what to expect and the pain and uncertainty of knowing exactly what to expect, but being terrified of feeling heartbroken again. And I want to honor both of those scenarios today. So we'll talk about the emotional landscape of a stim cycle, how our brain tries to predict outcomes in an unpredictable process, and how we stay tethered to ourselves through it all. And at the end, I'm going to guide you through a visualization similar to if you've listened to the embryo transfer podcast episode. But it's something that I give to some of my clients when they're going through this phase, not to fix anything. I can't fix it for you. It's more about creating connection to yourself within yourself, um, focusing on calmness, focusing on breath work, things like that. So I just want to start with saying that it's not in your imagination. There is a weird paradox that shows up during the stimulation portion of an IVF cycle. So when you're quite literally doing everything, some of us take 4 or 5 shots a day, some not as many, right? It just depends on your protocol. But you're doing multiple injections a day, tracking every single symptom, driving to the clinic every morning, every other morning for monitoring, whether that's blood draws, ultrasounds, both. You're rearranging your life, your work, your body, your meals, everything. And yet it can feel nothing, like nothing is happening. There's no outward progress. There's no baby bump. There's no like quote unquote results that you can point to yet. This part of IVF can feel like you're pouring gallons of effort into something that hasn't promised you anything in return, which is quite maddening if you think about it, right? And IVF is one of those very unique situations where that can be true. It doesn't maybe translate outside of IVF. Most people don't really understand that you're putting all of this effort, this time, money, attention, pain, blood, sweat, tears, all of it into something with no guarantee. There's also this internal voice, sometimes quiet, sometimes screaming, that says, this has to work. My body has to respond. These follicles have to grow. It feels urgent. It feels loaded. It feels heavy because we can, not everyone, but a large portion of us, we can start to associate follicle growth with identity. And what I mean with that is with our worth, with our ability to parent, with our deservedness to get pregnant, to have successful IVF experience, IVF process. In fact, we pretty much, not just in the stim cycle, but pretty much any benchmark of this process, we can start to equate success or failure with our own worth. But if worthiness is something that you have always struggled with, then I all but guarantee you that you're going to carry some or all of that into this IVF cycle. But here's the truth. Your follicles are not a measure of goodness. And I know that might sound like silly to hear, but it's true, right? Again, a lot of these things aren't we're not cognizant that we're equating our worth with the outcomes. We'll just call ourselves a failure or something like that towards the end of it. But it really is, it needs to be understood that your hormone levels are not a report card. Your follicle size are not a report card. You are not a machine. Your body is not obligated, I guess is the only word for it, to perform for you on command. And yet it does. It is trying. It's always trying. But friend, you are not a science project. It is a human body, and you are doing the absolute best that you can with it. It's doing the best it can, working with what it's got. And that includes genetics, your hormones, history, and all the stuff that you cannot control. And while stims can be overwhelming the first time, you don't know what to expect. Sometimes you have to mix medications, which is a whole new level of just brain busting. You're doing multiple shots and things like that. But for right now, I want to pause and I want to speak directly to those who are coming back for more. the ones who have already been through the emotional, physical toll of IVF and are stepping back into the ring, the ones whose hope has scar tissue, because returning is a different kind of hard. The first time you didn't know what you didn't know. You were scared, sure, but there's a possibility. There was momentum. There's a sense of forward motion. But when you've had unsuccessful stem cycles, when the last one gave you fewer eggs than you expected, or your embryos didn't grow, or the results just left you sobbing in your car, it becomes harder to hope next time because you're no longer just afraid of the unknown. You're also afraid of the known. You know what it's like for that heartbreak, for that failure, and that fear makes complete sense. Our brains are pattern-seeking machines. They don't like unpredictability. So when we've experienced defeat or pain, our brain says, hey, I know this is what's happening. Let's prepare for that again. And while we believe that maybe if we were to expect it to go wrong, it won't hurt as much, that we think maybe if we temper our hope, we'll protect ourselves. But the truth is, expecting pain doesn't protect us from it. It just adds more pain to the present moment. And it robs you of the moments where you could feel connected, where you could feel present, where you could access peace, even just a little bit. We don't have to live in this emotional suspension until our results come in. Although I know that that's where a lot of us do tend to live, in this emotional suspension. And I'm going to talk about that in a future podcast episode as well. But you are allowed to live in the present. You're allowed to live in your body, which I think is where the disconnection for a lot of us comes. And that's what we're going to do when we do the visualization in just a little bit. So if that's you, if you're walking into this stim cycle with a limp, I want you to know that you're not doing it wrong. You are doing something very brave, and brave does not mean fearless. It just means you're showing up even while afraid. Now, I want to shift a little bit to talk about the mental load that we carry during stims, the vigilance, the monitoring, the overthinking that feels impossible to turn off. The stim cycle often brings up hypervigilance. Right? You might find yourself checking symptoms obsessively, Googling things at 3 a.m., or looking at your body for signs of what we would say is a good response. And that makes total sense, right? Your brain is trying to find control in a situation that is largely uncontrollable. That's the nervous system. That is your nervous system activated and buzzing, saying, we are not safe. We are not okay unless we know what is going to happen. Here's what I want to offer you. You are safe right now. You are doing enough. And no amount of surveillance or worry will guarantee the outcome you want. Because trying to solve for the outcome doesn't actually bring peace. What brings peace is presence. So instead of asking, is this working? Maybe ask, what do I need right now? What's the most loving thing I can do for myself in this moment, in this time, in this phase? And that's how we start to come back to ourselves. That's the connection that I was just talking about. So please stop fighting for control and let's create some supports for you. Let's plan for moments that anchor us. Let's be deliberate in our care so we don't ask our anxious brain to figure it out in the middle of the chaos. And I'm sure the question you're asking is, how, Emily? How? It's a great question. I'm glad you asked. We plan for the storm before the storm. I'm going to say that again. We plan for the storm before the storm. You guys know I love a good plan. Planning for failure and coping ahead are two concepts that I talk about a lot on this podcast. I talk about a lot with my clients. And that is what I want you to do. I want you to plan ahead for how you want to support yourself through this phase of the IVF cycle. Think of who you become or who you worry you'll become, right? When you're in the thick of stims. The version of you that might feel bloated and crampy and short-tempered. God knows that was me. The version of you who bursts into tears in the drive-through line. Also me. The one who is tender and tired and overstimulated by the word stim. Okay? That version of you does not need discipline. She needs tenderness. She needs softness. She needs kindness. She needs someone to say, hey, I planned for this. I got you. So maybe that means pre-scheduling your meals or asking for help around the house. Maybe it means canceling that coffee date or giving yourself permission to watch trash TV without guilt. Maybe it's takeout on monitoring days. Maybe it's canceling that Zoom meeting. Maybe it's a note to your partner or your friend that just says, I need grace this week, not solutions. Planning for your needs isn't self-indulgent, it's protective. And for those of you who are people pleasers or high achievers, it is probably the bravest thing that you can do. So make the plan, write it out, tape it on your fridge, on your bathroom mirror, not because you need to perform care, but because you deserve to receive care. You deserve to receive care, compassion, kindness, and emotional safety all of the time, but absolutely when you're in the throes of a Stim cycle. So, okay, if you're still with me, I want to share that visualization that you can use during your Stim cycle. This is not a magic spell. This is not something to do perfectly. This is simply a practice, a way to reconnect with your body, your heart, and the part of you that still needs to believe in possibility. So if you're in a place or a space where you can pause, go ahead and close your eyes. If you're driving, please come back to this part later. But I want you to take 5 slow, deep, cleansing breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. You're just going to repeat that 5 times. Where you're breathing deep enough to get oxygen all through your body, and then you're breathing it out to allow for more openness later. Now I want you to imagine your body as a garden. In this garden, deep in the center of your pelvis are tiny buds. These are your follicles, right? Each one is wrapped in safety. Each one is doing its own quiet, holy work. Picture warm, golden sunlight coming down through the crown of your head. It is soft and healing. It flows down through your spine, through your belly, and wraps around your ovaries, your uterus, your whole reproductive system like a protective blanket. There's no pressure here. There's no deadlines, no performance metrics. Just trust. Say to yourself, I'm showing up. I'm doing enough. I trust my body's process. I'm safe. I'm not alone. I am held. What is meant for me will not pass me by. Let yourself stay in that garden for as long as you like. There's no time limit. No one's going to kick you out. Let your breath move gently. Let your nervous system soften. You don't have to force anything here. You are already doing enough. And I want you to remember that. Okay, so to wrap it up today, you're allowed to feel uncertain. You're allowed to feel hopeful. You're allowed to want this and still be scared of wanting it. This cycle is not a test of your emotional discipline. You don't have to perform hope or hide your fear of doing it right. There is only you doing your best again and again and again. So whether this is your first Stim cycle or your 5th, I want you to know you are doing sacred work, even if no one can see it and even if no one understands it. It does not take the sanctity away. I see you and I'm so proud of you. Now, that is what I've got for you today, my beautiful friends. Be gentle, go slow, especially towards the end of your Stim cycle. You're not going to be walking very fast, but go slow. Allow yourself to pace. Let people pass you by. Be the slow walker. I know that's always been one of my biggest pet peeves is being a slow walker, but be a slow walker. I've had to indulge in it just because of the nature of my knee injury, but it's okay. It's okay to slow down. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not alone. I'm right here with you. And that's what I have for you this week. And I'll talk with you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of IVF This. If you like what you've heard, click subscribe and follow to make sure you don't miss an episode. And if you want to learn more, head over to www.ivfthiscoaching.com to learn how to work together.